Hello, my name is Denny Newen-Griffiths. This is for Data for Policy Submission 4190, and I'm delighted to be joining you to talk about developing responsible practices for AI and machine learning in the work of research funders, so in research funding and evaluation. This is some learning from an ongoing project that we're running called GRAIL. Now, research funders really increasingly need to be very data-driven and responsive in the work that they do. And AI and machine learning methodologies are very powerful ways to help them leverage the rich data and the rich knowledge and expertise that research funders have developed over decades of doing their work. But there's a real need for shared and best practice on how to use AI and machine learning in the work of funding and evaluation, and how to do so responsibly. So I'm going to talk about a project that we're running with the Research on Research Institute called GRAIL, talk a little bit about why it was that we saw the need to put this project together, what it is that we're wanting to accomplish with it, talk about some of the goals that we're aiming to achieve and the methods that we're using to run the project, and I'll share some of the learnings, the key learnings that we've had to date from work that's been ongoing. As I said, this is part of the work of the Research on Research Institute, or RORI. So RORI brings together researchers, funders, publishers, data providers, everybody in the research ecosystem who has a commitment to improving research systems and cultures. And RORI is a global organization. It brings together partners from all around the world. In our project, in GRAIL, which is one of the 10 projects that RORI is running currently, we currently have 13 funder partners who are involved, representing 11 different countries across 3 continents. So the use of AI is a global issue, and we have a global coalition that we've been able to bring together around building this shared understanding and shared practice of using AI and machine learning in the work of research funding. And this draws out of some discussions that we had back in 2021, where the funder community has really been looking for a while to learn and to build best practice around AI. And there was a clear need that came out, and we saw this in a first few set of workshops that we ran in 2021 as just virtual get-togethers, where funders have been experimenting with using AI and machine learning. But it's difficult to share experiences and insights, especially when things go wrong, as they often do in experimentation. This is something we're quite familiar with. But when you are in a policy leading setting, it becomes difficult to share, these are the experiences that we've had, these are the things that we've tried to do, and this is what we've been able to learn. And because of that difficulty in sharing, because of that lack of avenues for exchange, there's a real opportunity for repeating risks across the same risk being repeated across different organizations, as well as developing diverging practices. So we developed a report coming out of these first few workshops. You can access it via the QR code on the slide, or you can go to the RORI website, researchonresearch.org, and find it in the project outputs there. But what these discussions led us to was really an understanding that we needed to build this kind of shared space to facilitate funders being able to talk to each other, to share these experiences, share these insights, and build a shared language, a shared understanding of using AI and machine learning in their work, and some shared practice around what doing that well and doing it responsibly looks like. Now, it's always worth taking a moment when we're talking about shared language and defining the terms that we're talking about here. So AI and machine learning are both very common buzzwords that get thrown around. When we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, we certainly include large language models, but it's much more than just that. You'll run into many different definitions of AI. The one that we use is one amongst many. But our operating definition is using data or structured knowledge and expertise to help automatically gain insight, to learn things from data, or take action in response to what you can see, what you know about the world. Machine learning is one of the tools that's available to help do that. So machine learning is statistical modeling of observed patterns in data. And what machine learning allows for is discovery and identification of hidden patterns, things that don't necessarily emerge to the human eye, things that we may not know to be looking for. These are kinds of patterns, kinds of relationships that machine learning can help to surface. But when we talk about responsible AI, when we think about using these tools, using these methods, it's much more than just taking a technology and applying it or building a better model. We also need to be thinking about how that use is being integrated into existing processes and systems. So we always want to use AI as part of doing something. Usually that's something that already exists. So we have a process in place, we have expectations, we have ways of doing it. How do we go about integrating AI tools into that process, making sure that we're achieving the same goals? Along with that, we need to think about how we manage the teams that are doing this. What are the different kinds of roles that are involved, the different kinds of expertise that are involved? How do we get them to work together and talk together and share an understanding of how we use AI in a complex organizational setting? Along with that is the question of alignment, not necessarily in the way that AI alignment is talked about, but thinking about alignment with social goals for a public sector organization, and strategic goals, where we're thinking these are the things that we want to be doing long term. How does our use of AI help us to get there? And is it something that is aligned with what we want to achieve and how we want to get to that point? And we have to ask as well about things like auditing, monitoring, mitigation of bias, mitigation of risk for creating social harm. We can go on, but thinking about the main piece of this is that when we think about responsible AI, when we think about using AI in an organizational context, it's much more than just the technology. It's about the systems of practice that we build around that technology and around using AI as one tool amongst many to help accomplish the things that we want to do. So we can start to break this down a little bit and use this to guide our research and guide our development of best practice. To think about understanding and use, to treat AI, to see putting it in context as a toolbox, a set of different tools that are available to help us support existing practices and goals. So making AI be a means, not an end. Thinking about the people and the skills that are involved, being able to work across the competencies to combine organizational, technical, ethical, strategic, communication, etc., all these different kinds of skills. And thinking, when we think about ethics and impact, thinking specifically about particular decisions that we make throughout the design of the system, its use, its implementation, and its management as part of organizational process. These different decisions that we can make, that we can start to trace, help to determine the ethical and the social outcomes of the use of an AI technology. So how is it that we're actually going about trying to get at this understanding, get at these key concerns in the GRAIL project? Well, we're building on a foundation of a community of learning. We have a virtual workshop series that is the core of the project that we're running from 2023 to 2025. That's our space for exchange, for shared learning and sharing of experiences, sharing of insights, and really starting to develop some of this shared language and practice. Along with that, we're doing some survey work on understanding what current practice looks like, how research funders around the world are using AI and machine learning in their work currently, and responding to that use to build good practice, to build a shared sense of what responsible use of AI and machine learning in the work of research funders looks like, and build practical guidance to help support that as we move forward. Our community of learning workshops are 2-hour virtual workshops that we're holding about every other month. And these are closed spaces. They're restricted to the research funders who are participating in the project. This is specifically to create safe spaces for complex conversations. Anyone who's tried to deploy AI in an organizational context, you know it is not a straightforward process. There are risks and different kinds of decisions involved, and so it's important to have a space where people can come together and talk through the different complexities and the different concerns that have come up in that. The workshops are co-produced with our funder partners. The funders help to identify the topics that we want to discuss, help to host and organize workshops, invite speakers, arrange format, etc. And what we're talking about is a mixture of topical discussions looking at specific use cases of AI and machine learning by our funder partners, as well as particular organizational challenges that arise when we try to think about solving this complex network of concerns and different network of competencies that are involved. How do we go about doing that in a way that supports the work of these organizations? Workshops are generally not recorded, but we do take notes for analysis and use this as a piece of our co-produced research process. We are doing some work with our partners and working with others in the Rory Consortium to get some example use cases of AI and machine learning from funders around the world. So we're collaborating with another Rory project on a global survey that's going out to the Global Research Council, which represents public funding bodies worldwide, with questions on how AI and machine learning are being used in research assessment or being investigated. So thinking about where AI and machine learning are being used or investigated, what kinds of benefits and risks are being seen around that, and how different kinds of organizational concerns are informing use. We're pairing that with more in-depth case studies that we're developing with our partner funders. This is through the workshop presentations and also through some internal surveys that we're conducting. And one of the key things that we're aiming to produce at the end of the project is a research funder's handbook of how to use AI and machine learning. And this is a pragmatic guide where we're really thinking about key steps and key considerations for the use of AI and machine learning in the work of research funding and evaluation. So it's important to note here, we're not thinking about how to use specific technologies, but really digging into what are the processes and the paradigms that guide the use of whatever AI tools we have available right now. These processes, these paradigms, these ways of thinking about AI, these do not change in the way that the technologies do. And so we can build this shared understanding on these competencies of what does AI use look like, how do you go about it, how do you assess the technologies that are available for you right now. That's the goal of this handbook. And we're co-producing this with our partners, we're drawing on our workshop discussions with them, we're co-authoring content with them. And so our vision for this handbook, which we'll be releasing in mid-2025, is for it to really represent not just our perspective and our expertise as researchers and academics working in this space, but to represent the lived experience and the lived expertise of our research funder partners who are working with these day in and day out. So some of the key things that have been coming out of the workshop discussions so far, obviously these discussions are continuing, but there's some key themes that have been emerging already that we were finding particularly interesting and wanted to bring out to this audience. We've held 6 workshops so far, covering topics including generative AI in research funding, looking at AI and machine learning in national research assessment exercises, looking at how we can develop meaningful AI and machine learning guidance for funders, particular cases of natural language processing. Research is a very text-heavy space, so text-focused AI methods are particularly relevant here, thinking about how responsible use of AI interfaces with policy considerations and different applications of AI to help with improving research assessment more broadly. One of the first key things that we've found that really aligns across the experience of all of our funders is that when we think about what data do we want to learn from for policy considerations, for funding decisions, etc., there's no single right answer. There's no single right data. There are many different ways that we can choose to represent research, researchers, proposals, institutions, etc., all the different kinds of actors in the research space. And the different choices that we can make mean that we'll be able to learn and model different things from those different data. So it's really about understanding what are your goals as a funder, what are your goals as somebody working with these data, what is it that you want to learn from, what is it that you want to learn about and be able to produce insights or action about. This is what helps to determine what are the appropriate data to choose for this particular application. And it's also important to note that not all data are available for all cases. So there are risks of availability bias that are built into this process of data selection and data assessment. There may be different kinds of data that are more available from certain kinds of funding projects. We don't necessarily want to be biased towards or against those projects. So understanding what data are going to be produced by whom is also a really key part of building this sense of how do we select the right data for this particular application. Something else that's really come up and is a particularly thorny problem as we think more about the use of AI in organizational settings is that often AI tools are evaluated in terms of task performance. Can this do the thing that we have built it to do? But good performance on a task does not necessarily translate to effectiveness in the practical application that we're putting these systems to. So if you introduce an information retrieval system, for example, into the process of funding review, you may be very good at retrieving relevant information, but does it change the process? Does it inform making the process better? That's the real question that we want to understand. And this is a real opportunity, a real area for where research is needed. And there's a couple of specific questions that have come up that are particular challenges to call out. One is knowing when something is good enough. This cuts in two directions. So when we think about an AI application being developed, often we'll go through a process of iteration. We want to try to make the model better, be able to perform the task as well as we can. Well, how do we know when to stop? How do we know that it is good enough, we've put enough resources into this is usable enough or useful enough or accurate enough that we can put it into practice? By the same token, how do we know when it isn't good enough and we shouldn't use it? We haven't been able to achieve the kind of effectiveness, the kind of reliability that we want. And so what's our threshold for saying this is good enough or not? This requires a much deeper understanding of the organizational context that we're trying to put these tools into. And I used the word reliability a moment ago. We need to be able to measure the reliability of these systems over time, across heterogeneous data, across different kinds of applications, as part of and as well as understanding their effectiveness. And this is really quite an open question. How do we assess what AI reliability looks like and means in an organizational context? One of the things that has come up repeatedly and is certainly a common theme in AI discussions is focusing on adding AI as part of the toolbox, not replacing the way that we're doing things. What we want is uses of AI that are responding to problems, that are being led by, this is the thing that I want to do, and AI will help me to do this part of it. Not saying, I have a new AI system, I have my new AI hammer, I want to go find the nails. Not to be leading with the solutions and going in search of a problem. This is a real risk. And so what we want is to shift the way that we're thinking to make sure that we're being led by the problems that we want to solve organizationally. What is it that we want to do? And where in that process are there pieces that AI technologies will help us to do it better? We talk a lot about the phrase human in the loop. And human in the loop is, when we think organizationally, absolutely essential practice. It's essential for oversight, making sure that we're making the right kinds of decisions, that we have points of accountability. And it's essential for making sense of, is this thing doing what we want it to do? How do we work with these technologies in practice? This is a question that must involve humans being involved at all stages of that. And we have to remember that AI is only one of many different tools for research funders. This is not about saying, take every process that you do and do it with AI. It's about thinking, what can AI do for me? Where is that the right tool that I need to deploy? I talked earlier about the issue of AI being cross-competency, and this is something that's really coming up a lot in our discussions, and an area where we need much greater degree of research and practice. We talk about AI often from a very technical perspective, thinking about technical expertise in developing and evaluating systems, but that technical expertise must be joined up with the strategic goals that we're trying to serve, with the operational knowledge, with the process understanding, with the understanding of just what is it that we're trying to do and what is the ecosystem that we're deploying these things in. When we approach AI in a siloed perspective, when we say, we'll have the technical team develop this thing and we'll give it to somebody else and they'll use it, what we get is an AI that solves something, but it solves the wrong problem more often than not. So we have to be grounding this process, the entire design and development and deployment process, in an understanding of what are the problems that we're trying to solve, what are the goals that we're serving, the strategic goals, what are the operational and the people context that we're working in. And that's how we can develop these kinds of joined up AI approaches that will help us to solve the right problems and gain the right kind of effectiveness. One of the key things that this requires, we see this in our workshop discussions as a microcosm of the kind of organizational discussions that we need, is being able to build a common language, to work across these different kinds of expertise, work across these different ways of thinking about what is your organization trying to do, and be able to share, this is where I can fit in, this is where you can fit in, this is how we can work together. Now, the last thing that I'll point out is something that came up very early on when public generative AI tools were released, is still a very, very hot topic and a key topic of conversation in AI and science. That's the question of AI and originality. But I'm not going to talk about the question of data falsification or data fabrication or anything like that, though that certainly does come up in our workshops. There's also an issue that when you're relying on machine learning, what machine learning is meant to do is mimic the past, to mimic what it has seen before. But if we think about a setting of science policy, we want to be able to favor, to see, to help shape novelty and change. And if we have machine learning that is simply mimicking the past, that novelty, that change, those roots for something different may be disfavored as deviation from the standard. So being able to use AI as one of your tools in making strategic change requires rethinking, what are the data that I want to learn from? What is going to be indicative of the kind of thing that I want to see, the kind of change that I want to support, the kinds of new methods or new work that we want to be able to grow in the sphere of science? And being able to say, these are the pieces of well-selected, perhaps smaller, perhaps more curated data that are indicative of where I want to be going, and how do I then learn from that? So this is, as I said, an ongoing project. If you want to keep in touch with what's going on, you can sign up for the Rory newsletter. You can just go to researchonresearch.org, sign up for the newsletter there, read more about this project as well as the other projects that are going on in Rory. Please feel free to reach out to me as well. You can use my email address as on the slide. I want to say a big thank you to all of our fantastic funder partners who are participating in the GRAIL project, as well as all the other members of the project team. Thank you very much.